Chapter 17. Concerning a return to civilized society and the stirrings of an unspoken affection. The late afternoon sun turned the harbour to liquid gold, and Carrie found herself studying the way Crispin's hands moved when he talked. They stood at the edge of the jetty, waiting for the stragglers from their tour group to assemble for the bus ride back to Hobart. The horror of the memorial garden still clung to them both, but something else had emerged in its wake. Something that hummed just beneath the surface of their careful conversation. "The light," she said, lifting her camera more from habit than intent. "It's perfect right now."
Is it?
He wasn't looking at the harbour. She lowered the camera. "You're not even looking."
I'm looking at something more interesting.
The words settled in the space between them. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant rumble of an engine starting up. She saw him swallow, saw his hand lift slightly as if to reach for her, then drop back to his side.
We should...
He cleared his throat, gestured towards the bus where Sharon was doing a head count.
They're waiting.
Right. She took a breath, steadied herself. The bus. They walked side by side, the space between them carefully maintained but somehow alive with possibility. The bus was already half full when they boarded, most of the older passengers settling into their seats with the satisfied exhaustion of tourists who'd had a full day. Carrie and Crispin found seats near the back, sliding in together without discussion. The vinyl squeaked as they sat, their thighs almost but not quite touching on the narrow bench seat. Sharon stood at the front with her microphone.
Right. Everyone accounted for? Excellent. It's about 90 minutes back to Hobart, so sit back and relax.
As if on cue, several grey heads began nodding forward even before the bus pulled away from the visitor centre. Within 10 minutes, the gentle rumble of the engine and the warm afternoon sun had worked their magic. The bus became a cocoon of sleeping tourists, their soft snores creating an oddly intimate atmosphere. "Like a mobile dormitory," Carrie whispered, glancing around at the dozing passengers.
Or a very sedate kidnapping.
Crispin murmured back.
No one would notice if we drove them all to Adelaide instead.
She stifled a laugh. "That's dark, Professor."
I blame Port Arthur. It's brought out my criminal tendencies.
"Is that what they are? Tendencies?" She kept her voice low, teasing. He turned to look at her properly, and the playfulness fell away.
I don't know what they are.
The confession hung between them. Around them, the sleeping passengers created a strange privacy, as if they were alone despite being surrounded by people. "Back there," she said quietly. "At the jetty."
Yes.
That was all. Just yes. But the word carried everything. Acknowledgement. Desire. Restraint. "Why didn't you?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. The bus rounded a curve and the movement pressed her shoulder against his.
There are things.
He said finally.
We all have roles to play, and I feel constrained.
"I know." And she did. She'd seen it in the way he'd pulled back, the weight of whatever life waited for him beyond this ship, the journey. We all have complications.
Do we?
He looked at her with genuine curiosity.
What are yours?
"My mother. She's..." Carrie paused, surprised to find herself on the edge of confession. "She's ill. Really ill. When I get home from this cruise, I become her full-time carer once more. No more travelling, no more photography assignments. Just duty." The word tasted bitter in her mouth.
Ah.
His expression softened, the professional curiosity replaced by a look of profound personal recognition.
The cage.
"The cage," she agreed. Without conscious thought, his hand found hers on the seat between them. His fingers laced through hers, that same anchoring gesture from the island, but this time there was something else in it. Not just shared grief, but shared recognition. His grip hardened, a physical expression of empathy that made her throat tighten.
How long?
he asked. The doctors don't know for sure. It's not something that ends quickly. It could be a long time. Years, maybe. She shrugged, the gesture at odds with the weight of her words. As long as she needs. His thumb traced small circles on her palm. The gentle pressure bloomed into a warmth that spread up her arm and into her chest, like the slow unfurling of a time-lapse flower. And you? She asked. What cage are you returning to? He was quiet again, but his hand tightened on hers.
A life I built very carefully, very deliberately. One that made perfect sense until a day ago.
What happened?
You asked if my ghosts were disappointed.
The bus began climbing the approach to the Tasman Bridge, the massive span stretching across the Derwent River. Through the window, Carrie could see Hobart spreading out below them, the mountain beyond, the harbour where their ship waited. The sun was lower now, painting everything in shades of amber and rose. She shifted in her seat, turning slightly towards him. The movement brought her breast against his arm, a pressure both accidental and deliberate. She felt him stiffen, heard his sharp intake of breath.
Carrie.
I know, she said. Complications, responsibilities, I know. But she didn't move away. Neither did he. They sat pressed together, hands clasped, bodies close, surrounded by sleeping strangers, as the bus carried them over the bridge. The contact was minimal, just the soft but pointed pressure. But she noticed his breathing quicken. His free hand rose, fingers barely grazing her cheek before dropping away.
Tonight there's a panel in the Royal Court Theatre.
I know. Creating believable characters.
Will you come?
Of course. The bus descended into Hobart's evening traffic. Around them, passengers began stirring, stretching, checking watches. The public world reasserted itself, dissolving their private cocoon. They separated, hands sliding apart, bodies shifting to respectable distances. But something had been acknowledged that couldn't be taken back. Back at the ship, they parted in the atrium with careful politeness, aware of the other passengers around them.
8:30 then,
he said. 8:30. She watched him walk towards the lifts, his posture straight but something new in his stride, something that looked like anticipation. Carrie returned to her cabin and stood under the shower for a long time, letting the hot water wash away the dust of Port Arthur, but not the memory of his touch. She dressed carefully for dinner, choosing a silk blouse that caught the light, taking more care with her appearance than she had all cruise. The Britannia restaurant was its usual elegant chaos, but Carrie barely tasted her food. Gideon and Elspeth, her table mates, chatted about their day in Hobart, but she only half listened, her mind on the evening ahead.
Tomorrow should be lovely,
Elspeth was saying.
Great Oyster Bay is supposed to be stunning. No port stops, just scenic cruising.
Oh yes, I'm looking forward to it. Carrie smiled politely. A day at sea. A day with nowhere to go, no excursions to distract. A day when Crispin would be just a few decks away, she guessed. Where were the Princess Grill cabins, she wondered? As the main course plates were cleared, Carrie checked her watch. Just after 7:30. The panel started at 8:30, but she wanted a good seat. I'm sorry, she said, folding her napkin. I'm going to have to skip dessert again. There's a panel discussion in the Royal Court Theatre I don't want to miss.
Of course, dear,
Elspeth said.
Is it that handsome Alexander McCall Smith? We do love his books.
He's one of the panellists, yes? Carrie said, standing. Thank you for the company. She made her way to the Royal Court Theatre with time to spare. It was already filling up, the panel format having drawn a bigger crowd than the individual lectures. She found a seat in the centre section, about a third of the way back, with a clear view of the stage where 5 chairs were arranged in a semicircle. The moderator, a literary editor from London, welcomed everyone warmly.
Tonight, we're discussing the art of creating characters that feel real enough to walk off the page and join us for dinner. Please welcome our distinguished panel. Best-selling author Maeve Penhaligon, beloved chronicler of Botswana, Alexander McCall Smith, award-winning crime writer Julia Wheeler, and popular historian Crispin Shrike.
The audience applauded as the four authors took their seats. Crispin scanned the crowd subtly, his eyes finding Carrie's for just a moment before focusing on the moderator. He sat stiffly, a stack of notes in his hand that he placed carefully on his knee.
Let's begin with you, Alexander.
The moderator said.
Your characters, particularly Ma Ramotswe, have become like real people to millions of readers. What's your secret?
Alexander McCall Smith settled comfortably in his chair, his genial demeanour immediately warming the room.
Well, I'm not sure there is a secret, really. I think it comes down to fondness. I'm tremendously fond of my characters. I think about what they would say in situations I encounter in my own life. What would Ma Ramotswe think about this traffic jam? How would she handle this difficult conversation?
So they live with you beyond the page?
The moderator asked.
Oh my, yes.
Alexander replied with a soft chuckle.
They become like old friends, you see. And I think that's when readers begin to feel the same way, when the author genuinely cares about these people, even though they are, technically speaking, not people at all.
Maeve, the moderator turned, your characters often face extraordinary historical circumstances. How do you make them relatable despite the distance in time and experience?
Maeve Penhaligon leaned forward, her energy a striking contrast to Alexander's gentle presence.
For me, it's about the universal emotions. Fear, love, jealousy, desire. These don't change, whether you're in ancient Rome or modern Sydney. I might spend 2 years researching the historical details of a period, but what I'm really looking for are the human moments in between. The way a mother in 1850 feels when her child is in danger is exactly how a mother feels today.
Carrie watched Crispin listening intently to his fellow panellists, occasionally nodding in agreement. There was a sharp new focus to him, an engagement that seemed to charge the air around him, though he still sat like the academic he was, straight-backed and a bit formal.
Julia, as a crime writer,
The moderator continued.
you often deal with both perpetrators and victims. How do you create empathy for both?
As Julia answered, Carrie's attention drifted to Crispin again. His hands rested on his knees, long fingers occasionally tapping a rhythm only he could hear. She remembered the feeling of those fingers laced through hers, the gentle pressure of his thumb tracing circles on her palm.
Crispin,
The moderator said, drawing her attention back.
historical fiction occupies an interesting middle ground. You're writing about real people who actually existed, but you still need to create them as characters. How do you approach that challenge?
Crispin cleared his throat, glanced down at his notes. When he began speaking, his voice had the same measured academic tone she'd heard in his first lecture.
The challenge with historical figures is...
He paused, looked up, and his gaze found hers in the audience. His spine straightened, his shoulders relaxed. He set his notes aside with a decisive motion. When he began again, his voice had a new timbre, warmer and more resonant.
The mistake I've been making
He said, leaning forward in his chair.
is thinking that historical figures are different from fictional characters, that because they actually lived, they don't need me to bring them to life on the page.
Carrie watched his hands as he talked, no longer resting stiffly on his knees, but moving in the air, sculpting his thoughts into form.
But the truth is,
He continued,
knowing someone existed isn't the same as knowing them. The facts of their life, dates, places, events, those are just the skeleton. What makes them real is the space between the facts, the moment of hesitation before a decision, the thing they didn't say, the letter they wrote but never sent.
His eyes found hers in the audience, held them.
I've spent years writing about dead people as if they were only ever dead. But they weren't. They were gloriously, messily complicated alive. They made mistakes. They fell in love at the wrong time with the wrong people. They said things they regretted. They didn't say things they should have.
Alexander McCall Smith nodded thoughtfully.
The universality of human experience.
Yes, Carrie thought. The things that connect us across time and circumstance. The way I recognize something in you that feels ancient and immediate at once.
Exactly.
Crispin said. But he was still looking at Carrie.
The things that don't change, desire, fear, the weight of duty versus the pull of passion.
Maeve Penhaligon laughed, a warm, rich sound that carried through the theatre.
Careful, Crispin. You're starting to sound like a romance novelist.
A small jolt of self-awareness ran through Carrie. Was their connection so obvious that even strangers could see it?
Perhaps that's not such a bad thing.
He replied, finally looking away from Carrie.
Perhaps history has more to do with secret love affairs and broken hearts than it does with battle plans and treaties. We just haven't been reading the right letters.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Maeve said, a delighted, conspiratorial smile spreading across her face.
I've always thought historians are missing a trick when they focus on battles and treaties. The real story is often in the bedroom, isn't it? Behind closed doors.
Carrie felt her cheeks warm slightly. Alexander smiled benignly.
Or in the small, seemingly insignificant moments. The cup of tea shared on a veranda. The conversation that changes everything.
Like a conversation in darkness in a punishment cell, Carrie thought, when a stranger suddenly becomes the one person who understands.
The glance across a crowded room.
Maeve added with a theatrical flourish, causing the audience to laugh.
Or the photograph that captures something essential.
Crispin said quietly, and though he wasn't looking at Carrie, she felt the words directed at her. The moderator steered the conversation towards craft techniques, and the authors began discussing research methods and character development. Carrie listened, fascinated by the interplay between them. Alexander's gentle wisdom, Maeve's brisk enthusiasm, Julia's thoughtful insights, and Crispin's growing passion all created a kind of intellectual symphony, ideas bouncing off each other, building and deepening.
I find that characters often surprise me.
Alexander was saying.
I'll be writing along, thinking I know exactly what Mara Motsway will do, and suddenly she does something entirely different. It's rather humbling, really, as if she's reminding me that I'm not entirely in charge.
Oh, yes.
Maeve agreed emphatically.
That moment when they take over is magical. Terrifying sometimes, but magical. I had a character once who was supposed to die at the end of the book, quite tragically. I'd planned it all out, but when I got there, she absolutely refused. Just wouldn't do it. And she was right, of course.
So you changed the ending?
The moderator asked.
Had to. She made me see that her story wasn't finished, that there was more to be said.
Crispin leaned forward.
That's what I'm struggling with in my current work. The historical record says one thing, but I'm beginning to feel that there's a different truth underneath. A story that wasn't recorded, but was perhaps more important than the one that was.
Trust that instinct.
Alexander advised.
The historical record is just one version of events. There are always multiple truths.
The truth of the heart versus the truth of the facts.
Maeve added.
Precisely.
Crispin said. And Carrie watched as the last of his academic uncertainty seemed to fall away, replaced by a look of sheer, unshakable conviction. The panel continued, but she barely heard it. She was too focused on watching him, this transformed version of the man she'd met just days ago. Every gesture seemed amplified. Every word carried weight. When he laughed at something Alexander said, she smiled in unison. When he paused to think, fingers pressed to his lips, she found herself holding her breath. This was what he'd been searching for, she realized. Not just the facts of his book, but its emotional truth, the humanity beneath the history.
I'd like to open the floor to questions.
the moderator announced. Hands shot up across the theatre. An elderly woman asked Alexander about his music. He was apparently also a bassoonist, which led to a charming anecdote about a concert in Edinburgh that had the audience in stitches. A young man asked Maeve about her research trips, and she regaled them with a tale of getting lost in the catacombs beneath Paris.
I was doing research for a historical thriller
She explained.
and convinced myself I absolutely had to see the tunnels. Ended up separated from the tour group, completely lost, with only the light from my phone. Terrifying at the time, but it made it into the book. Every heart-stopping moment.
The things we do for our art.
Julia said with a laugh.
Indeed.
Crispin agreed.
I once spent 3 days in a freezing Scottish castle with no electricity because I wanted to understand what it felt like to live there in the 16th century.
And?
Maeve prompted.
Cold. Very, very cold. And I cheated by bringing a torch. But the sounds at night, the way the darkness felt different, the smell of the stone, those things I couldn't have imagined.
A woman near the front raised her hand.
Mr. Shrike, can you tell us a bit more about your Victorian photographer? I'm fascinated by early photography.
Crispin brightened visibly.
Certainly. Letitia Cameron was one of the pioneers of portrait photography in the 1890s. What makes her story particularly interesting is that she didn't begin her photographic career until she was 48 when her mother gave her a camera.
Do we know anything about her personal life?
The woman pressed.
Not as much as I'd like.
Crispin admitted.
There are the official records, of course, but I've been working with her letters and there are fascinating hints about a relationship she had as a young woman, before her marriage, a man who left England for the colonies. Apparently he sent her only one letter after he left, which included a map of Tasmania to remember him by. I believe it was quite significant to her. She kept it until her death.
A wave of knowing laughter swept through the audience. Crispin paused, looking puzzled. Maeve leaned across to him, her hand covering her microphone. She whispered something in his ear, her free hand sketching a quick upside-down triangle in the air. Crispin's eyes widened and a flush crept up his neck.
Ah,
He said, clearing his throat.
I see. I was referring to the actual island, of course.
Of course you were, dear, Maeve said, patting his arm as the audience's laughter redoubled. The moderator smoothly moved on to another question, but Carrie caught Crispin's eye across the theatre. He gave her a small, rueful smile that sent a dizzying little flutter through her body. The questions continued, delving into writing routines, favourite books, publishing experiences. Throughout, Carrie watched the authors interact, the genuine respect and camaraderie between them evident in their responses.
Final question.
The moderator announced, pointing to a woman in the middle of the theatre. This is for Crispin, she said. You mentioned that love drives more of history than we admit. Could you give an example from your own work? Crispin paused, considering.
In a previous book, The Heart of Africa, I wrote about a Victorian explorer who officially travelled to map uncharted territories. But in his private letters it became clear that he was really searching for a woman who had disappeared in the region years earlier. The maps were just a pretext, a way to fund the journey. What drove him wasn't the desire for geographical knowledge, but love, and yet the history books remember him only for the maps.
The true motive hidden beneath the official story, Maeve said with obvious delight. I love that. It's the perfect metaphor for what we've been discussing.
Indeed,
Alexander agreed.
the heart has its own compass.
The moderator stood.
Please join me in thanking our wonderful panelists.
The audience erupted in applause. As the authors stood to acknowledge it, Maeve leaned over to Crispin and said something that made him laugh. Carrie wished she could hear what it was. When the clapping subsided, people began to swarm the stage, books in hand for signing. Carrie hung back, watching as Crispin spoke with readers, signed books, and posed for photos. Each interaction was gracious, focused. But every few minutes, his eyes would find hers across the theatre, a silent thread of connection. Eventually, the crowd thinned. Alexander and Maeve were still surrounded by admirers, but Crispin managed to extricate himself and make his way to where Carrie waited. "You were brilliant," she said.
I felt it. For the first time in months, I felt connected to my work.
He paused.
To everything, really.
They stood there, the theatre emptying around them, neither suggesting they leave. "Drink?" she finally asked.
Yes, God, yes.
The Commodore Club on Deck 10 was quieter than the other bars, more intimate with its leather chairs and subtle lighting. A pianist played soft jazz in the corner. They found a table by the forward windows where the lights of Hobart reflected in the dark water. Crispin ordered whiskey. She chose wine.
To finding what we were looking for.
He said, raising his glass. "Even if we weren't sure what that was," she added. They clinked glasses, the sound barely audible over the music. "Your panel," she said. "The way you talked about characters, about bringing the dead to life."
It's what you do with your camera, isn't it? Find the life in the moment.
"Sometimes."
No,
He leaned forward.
always. I've watched you. You don't just take pictures. You capture something essential.
"And you don't just write history, you resurrect it."
I'm trying to learn how.
He set down his glass.
Carrie, I need you to understand something.
"Complications," she said. "I know."
No, not that. Well, yes, that. But
He struggled for words.
this week has been... You've been...
She reached across and took his hand. "I know.
Do you?
Tomorrow we cruise Great Oyster Bay, then a day at sea, then Sydney, and then..."
And then we go back to our cages.
Yes. The air between them was filled with everything unsaid. Carrie focused on the rim of her glass, the cool surface beneath her fingertip, the intensity of his gaze like a physical touch on her skin. Around them, other passengers chatted and laughed, oblivious to the tension at their small table. "But we have tonight," she said quietly.
We have tonight.
He echoed. He glanced around the crowded club, the air thick with perfume and the murmur of polite conversation.
Would you like to get some air? It's rather stifling in here.
She recognized the need in his voice, an echo of her own. "Yes, please." They left their drinks half finished and made their way outside. The night was clear and cool, the stars brilliant above, the moon casting a silver pathway across the water. They climbed stairs to the top deck where the pools lay silent and empty, the water glassy in the moonlight. Not entirely empty, Carrie realised. In one of the hot tubs, a couple sat close together, their silhouettes merged in the steam rising from the water. As she and Crispin approached, she caught a glimpse of movement, heard a soft, stifled sound. A flare of heat rushed through her, part embarrassment, part envy, part sudden, intense awareness of the man beside her. Crispin's hand settled decisively on her lower back, steering her towards the opposite side of the deck. The warmth of his palm through her blouse made her heart jump.
Perhaps we should give them some privacy.
He murmured, his voice rougher than before. "They're the ones in a public hot tub," she pointed out, but let him guide her away, acutely aware of his touch. They found a quiet corner near the ship's funnel, sheltered from the breeze, with a view of the harbour and the distant lights of Hobart. The rumble of the ship's engines was a gentle vibration beneath their feet, a reminder that they were separate from the world, adrift in their own moment.
What happens after Sydney?
He asked quietly. "I told you. I go back to my cage."
And if there was a way out?
She shook her head. "There isn't. Not for me. My mother needs me."
And what do you need?
The question hung between them, impossible to answer. Instead of trying, she stepped closer to him, close enough to feel the heat of him in the cool night air. This is it, she thought. This is the point of no return. and I'm ready. Right now, she said, I need you to stop asking questions. His hands came up to frame her face, and when he kissed her, it was nothing like she'd imagined. It was better, deeper, more necessary. His lips were warm against hers, his body solid and real as she pressed against him. Her hands found their way inside his jacket, feeling the heat of him through his shirt, the rapid beat of his heart beneath her palm. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing unsteadily.
We should.
He began. Yes, she agreed. We should. They walked back through the ship's corridors, not speaking, the silence between them taut with a shared, unspoken question. His cabin was on deck 7, not far from the central lifts. It was a regular Princess Grill cabin, slightly larger than hers, with a small sitting area and the same elegant cornered furnishings, but she barely noticed the details. All she could focus on was him, the way he looked at her in the moonlight streaming through the balcony doors.
Are you sure?
He asked. Instead of answering, she stepped inside, drawing him in, close enough to feel the heat of him through his shirt. The heavy cabin door closed with a solid, definitive thud, sealing them into their own world, separate from the ship, from their responsibilities, from everything but this moment. His hands came up to frame her face, and he kissed her again, deeply, thoroughly, as if he were memorizing the feel of her. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing unsteadily. She reached for his jacket, sliding it off his shoulders, letting it fall to the floor. Such a simple act, but it felt like crossing a border, entering territory from which there was no return. His hands were at the buttons of her blouse, moving slowly, giving her time to change her mind. She didn't.